This is the Double Doink Dynasty League podcast with Boyer, Andy, and your host, Tyler.
It's impossible.
Season's going to end on a double doink.
Welcome back to Fantasy Football Podcast. Whoa, not Fantasy Football Podcast. Hold on. Do shut it off and do it again.
No, that's not how we do it, bud.
Welcome back to the Double Doink Dynasty Football Podcast.
The redheaded stepchild of...
Presented by your performance-enhancing dads. It's been a while. I apologize. I messed that one up. Andy probably won't edit that out at all, so we're moving on.
I don't get paid enough for that.
Yeah.
I thought I was the one on drugs. Jeez.
It's been a while, man. All right. Well, anyway, welcome back in. We're going to cover the draft. We're going to cover draft grades. We're going to talk about some positives, some negatives that happened. Talk about the trades. There were 14 of them. Also, good work, fellas, getting this slow draft in just about 3.5 days with 14 trades. Move things along. I really enjoyed it. It worked out for those that had to work, or worked out for those of you that needed to trade all night. Andy, Boyer, what do you guys think?
I was happy with it. I expected there to be a lot of trade talks, and there were. So that was the main reason that I had pushed so hard for a slow draft was last year's draft, really the startup draft and the rookie draft. There's a little bit of trade convo, but when we're all on a Zoom call, even without a clock, like you really feel like you're holding up the draft when you're trying to talk trades, and heaven forbid that you're trying to play two people against each other when everybody's staring at you, mouth breathing into their microphones. It's just awkward. And I remember there was at least one, I think it might have been Boyer last year, that was just like, I'm just going to make a pick because this is taking too long. I was like, well, we don't want that. Like, we want there to be trades because we have all summer to figure this out. So all of that went how I expected, but I was very surprised we got it done in 3.5 days. Good for all of you ladies. I figured it was going to take like 2 weeks and people would complain, but if we can rock this out in 3 or 4 days every time, I think that's pretty good work.
I know some people lost some sleep during this time period, but yeah, I thought it went pretty well too. I gotta imagine we had at least 3 times as many trades as the previous rookie draft or something.
Easily. I think there was maybe 2 in the rookie draft last year.
And I made 4 of them, and I felt like I was wheeling and dealing, and it was a lot of fun. It was a fun 4 days. I don't know what to do with myself now. It's like,
there were
who do I text? Who do I talk to?
There were seven draft trades last year in the rookie draft. So
there were 7 trades during the draft last year.
All right, well, double then. Still double.
I gave one to Jerry Fry. I gave one to Underhill. I got another one with Jeremy Fryer, and then I had one with Colin Nolan, and I had one with Jeremy and Fryer.
Oh, well, so 5 of them involved Tyler.
So, yeah. Outside of that, I do think, to be honest, I like the start on Thursday because then once we hit the weekend, things flew through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also thought participation throughout the league was good. I mean, everybody was talking back and forth. It seems like everybody was involved in some sort of trade talks. So that was good to see too, seeing all 12 members involved. So I think it went as well as you could hope it would.
It was a bonding experience.
All right. So with that, we're going to jump into some draft grades and analyze your draft a little bit, tell you what we liked, what we didn't like. And then you can yell at us later about how much we were right or how bad we were wrong, whatever. Andy, you want to do me a favor and jump in? All right, so hold on. We're going to jump in with Matt. First off,
how do you want to do this?
We went into this blind. All of us kind of went in with our own thoughts, our own mentality on how we were going to grade people. And you'll kind of see that as we go along. I'm going to let me and Andy will go first, and then Boyer will jump in at the end because he had a totally different perspective on doing draft grades than me and Andy did. So Andy, I'm going to let you start talking for Matt, and then I'll jump in, give my grade and everything after you. I'll cover whatever I don't think you covered, and then we'll let Boyer jump in with his side.
Cool. So I'm going to run down the notes that I took. And Ty may have done things differently, but I didn't like grade each player taken. Basically, what I looked at was what did the team need going into the draft, and how well did they address that? Slash, did they pick good players at the right time or not? So Matt going into the draft needed some quarterback help, and he could have used some RB depth. And then he went ahead and picked Alec Pierce, Kenny Pickett, Tyler Algier, Malik Willis, Romeo Dubes, Calvin Austin, and Britain Brown. Matt did not make any trades during the draft. And my notes here, for a guy that didn't pick until the middle of the second round, Matt got a lot done. He needed quarterback, and he went ahead and took not one, but both of the top quarterbacks in this class, fantasy-wise, in my eyes. So great work there. Unlike last year, these guys weren't going off the board in the first round. So the fact that he didn't have to trade up to get a quarterback is great. He also, at the very end of the second round, got Tyler Algier, who steps into the lead running back role in Atlanta, which is a great situation. Their offense seems to be improving, and unless you are a Cordero Patterson truther, which I am very much not, there's not a lot of competition there. Mike Davis is gone, I think, so great situation to be getting what is effectively a low-end starting running back at the end of the second round. And all of that says nothing of the fact that his first pick was Alec Pierce, who's pretty talented, finds himself in a good situation over in Indianapolis as a wide receiver that Matt didn't even really need. So I thought he did a great job of using what he had to get what he needed. I gave Matt an A- on my draft grade.
Yeah. So, Matt had a solid starting lineup, but could use depth at running back and quarterback is kind of what I had going into it. I thought Matt got solid value with his first three picks, with Alec Pierce going at the 205, Kenny Pickett at the 209 being the only first round quarterback being picked, got him at the 209. I thought was solid. And I thought Algier should have gone earlier in the draft. So getting him late, I thought was a steal. After that, he grabbed Malik Willis. Did I think he needed a second quarterback? Maybe not, but where he got him, I'm not mad about it. Romeo Dubes, Calvin Austin, Britton Brown, all dart throws. But I liked the value of Pickett. I liked the value of Algier. Even Alec Pierce, I thought was a fine value at 205. He did fill that running back depth need and that quarterback need. I gave Matt a B+. So good work on your draft, Matt. You were the only team that had 7 picks. The only thing that I thought you could have maybe done better is to package that late second or a couple thirds or fourth something and tried to move up to grab another guy, or tried to package something from next year and try to get up a little bit into this year to really solidify. But without making a move, having those 7 picks, I thought all of your early picks that mattered were solid picks. So I'll give you a B+. Boyer, you're gonna jump in?
Yeah, so I did my analysis a little bit differently. Essentially, what I did is I took your picks that you had going into the draft and input them into Keep Trade Cut. If you guys don't know what Keep Trade Cut is, it's just a website that pretty much crowdsources rankings and values to help determine dynasty value for players. So put in your input for what you had going into the draft and your output, who you drafted out, and see where it shakes out. And Matt did very well. He was the number 3 ranked out of total value. He made most of his money off the Algier pick in the late second. He made getting Malik Willis in the late third was like 1,000 in value, and that's crazy. He ended up being plus 2,028. Personally, I thought he had a good draft. Getting Pickett and Willis makes sense. The where he lost a little bit of value was Keep Trade Cut doesn't like the Pierce pick at the 205. I think he was probably looking at more like the 208. But he is in a good situation, so I don't mind the pick. And Matt overall did very well. So,
All right.
Good work, Matt.
Matt, good draft. We're gonna jump down to Boyer. Let's see how Boyer did. So kind of like Matt, this team's set up to make a run. Clearly, those are the top two teams in our division. Me and Paul will talk about us in a little bit. But Boyer didn't have a lot of draft capital coming into this one. Boyer grabs Claypool in the 202, which turned into Damian Pierce, and really just moved around some picks after that. Grabbing Damian Pierce at the 202, I thought was all right. I've seen some people take Damian Pierce as high as the 201, 202, and I've seen him go in the late first. Kind of between him and Brian Robinson and Tyler Algier and some of those second-round quarterback or running backs. Kind of just take your guy, and that's what Boyer did with Pierce here. Hoping he jumps into that Houston role, grabs that starting role, and it becomes valuable for at least a year to help Boyer out for this year. He grabbed Pacheco, Sam Howell, and Charlie Kohler late in the draft to fill his taxi. His only real need that I had for him was really the wide receiver 3. Depending upon Godwin's injury, Ridley's out for the year, that type of stuff. His running back 1 to 3 should be fine, but grabbing Pierce helped him fill some of that. Grabbing Claypool definitely helped him at that wide receiver 3 flex spot. So I gave Boyer a draft grade of a B for grabbing Claypool, because I think that could definitely help you this year. Getting to that 202 and grabbing Pierce as well was a big move for you.
Yep, I had Boyer needing some running back depth, wide receiver depth, and he ended up with Pierce and Claypool, which addresses that need. The part that I take a little bit of issue with is Boyer effectively gave up 4 picks in the second and third rounds to get Pierce and Claypool. He gave up the 207, the 304, the 208, and the 310, and ended up with the 202, which was Pierce, Claypool, and a 4th rounder next year. Looking at some of the talent in the draft, that feels like a lot. But at the end of the day, Boyer's trying to make a move for now. Pierce finds himself as the lead back probably in Houston, and Claypool's got a little bit more defined role than somebody like Mechie, who is probably a receiver that was available in that spot. So Boyer got what he needed. I just don't know about the trades that he made to have to get up to do it. So I gave him a solid B. I do want to call out that Boyer made some savvy picks in the 5th round. He had the 508 and the 510. He picked up Sam Howell. Boyer didn't need a quarterback. He's got Justin Herbert, but at the 508, anybody in the 508 that's actually going to see time on the playing field is worth taking. So solid pick there. And then Charlie Kohler is a tight end that Baltimore drafted, and Boyer has Mark Andrews. So he's probably going to cut him at some point because there's only so many taxi spots. But the time being, that's a handcuff, and that was, you can't ask for more value at your 5'10" than a little bit of insurance. So smart picks there. I just want to call that out.
Boyer, how'd you do on your end?
Yeah, so the Keep Trade Cut value difference for me was 34. That was good for 7th. I was the last in positive. Andy Keep Trade Cut agrees with you, is that the value that I got out of the 207, 208 doesn't really equal up to Pierce, but I did get him specifically just because he had a defined enough role and I was looking to compete. So I did take a value hit there. The Claypool and the thirds was actually fairly even, which I know is that there's some in the league that thought that it was a really good trade on my end.
I think it was a great trade for both of you. It made sense what you were both trying to do. It's just that there's 3 receivers there. The quarterback situation's up in the air too. So Is Claypool going to be anything? We don't know, but you're taking a shot at the guy who's been playing for 3 years, and that's better than a rookie.
Right, and he had all sorts of depth at wide receiver, so he could give it up for some youth down the line. So I think Key Trade Cut actually gets this right, where both teams get what they need. Where I really make up the value is the Sam Howell pickup at the 508. Just for reference, a 508 is worth about 430 points. Sam Howell was worth 1,211. So I would be way down without that pick. But it ends up getting me to where I feel like I did, where it okay, not great. I got a couple guys that I needed. I'll probably be hurting a little bit in youth and rookies for the future, but if it leads to a championship, hopefully that's what it does. So just an okay draft, got what I needed, and that's it.
I mean, you took Davis Mills late last year.
And that worked out.
And I like Sam Howell. I think he's better than Matt Corral. I think he's probably the quarterback 3 in the class. I think it just depends upon when he gets his shot.
Yeah, he was considered last year. He was considered an early first round pick for this year's draft. So I know he fell down, and I know that there's reasons for that. But I mean, if you can get somebody who at least at one point was thought that highly in the 5th, I'll take a shot on that. It worked with Davis Mills. I can't expect it to work every year, but if it works 1 out of every 5 times or 6 times, then that's a usable player. I'll take it.
So, all right, Andy, you want to jump into
what I'm hearing
go ahead.
with Boyer's methodology is that if you take a late round quarterback, then you get bumped up his rankings. So for next year, guys.
All right, Andy, jump into Paul for me.
Let's talk about Paul. So Paul's pre-draft needs wide receiver, some more wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He could use some running back depth, maybe some tight end help, but a lot of hole at wide receiver. And Paul took care of business when it came to his need for wide receiver. He took Drake London, he took Christian Watson, he took Brian Robinson, he took Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Tolbert, and Khalil Shakir. Paul nabbed the best wide receiver in the draft, Drake London. He, with his second first-round pick at the 110, grabbed a 6'5" monster in a great situation in Green Bay and Christian Watson. He also took Wan'Dale Robinson, who I'm not super jazzed about him landing on the Giants. They've got a lot of receivers. It's pretty messy there. Their offense isn't great, but he's got the draft pedigree. He was drafted pretty high in the 2nd round, ahead of a lot of other receivers that went before him in our draft. And that means something in the NFL. So as the 3rd receiver going to Paul's team, solid pick there. Added a former Alabama running back whose coach is already raving about him, and Brian Robinson, a couple of late upside wide receivers, and Tolbert and Shakir with his late picks. Paul's turning this team around. I gave him an A. Good work, bud.
All right, so I'm going to agree with most of what Andy said. He needed wide receiver. It's the most glaring need in the league out of any team. Paul's team, wide receivers, biggest need in the league. And he did it. He grabbed London. You're welcome. He grabbed Watson. Also, I don't know if you're welcome for that, because everybody gave me a hard time for drafting Pickens before Watson, but we'll get to that on my team, I'm sure. But my only knock, I have Paul at an A. He did what he had to do, grabbed his wide receivers, grabbed 5 of them, and grabbed Brian Robinson. My only knock, to be honest, for me personally, this would have been an A+ draft. It would have been my only A+ draft had Paul grabbed a guy like Tyler Algier at the 210 instead of Brian Robinson. I think Tyler Algier is walking into a more defined role. And granted, maybe Paul doesn't want that because he doesn't want a guy that's going to win this year so he can be worse, so he can get the better pick next year. But if Gibson is good, and I get it's a big if at this point, and he's on my team, so I'm saying that.
Yeah, and health's been a concern.
Right, and I get they want to use 2 running backs, they want to, whatever, but they still got McKissick, they still got Gibson, they had Robinson. Algier still being there at the 210, Paul into the 212. I probably would have taken a shot on Algier here just because he has a clear path the Falcons are really trying to build that offense. And I think if he takes that role, he's going to be the starter for a couple of years because they're not going to be looking to draft another big name running back when they need a quarterback and all these other things. I think Algier has more longevity there and a more clear path, where Robinson, he's stuck behind McKissick and Gibson, and who knows what that's going to look like. And Brian Robinson is also older. So, that was my only knock. Otherwise, me personally, I would have given him an A+ had he flipped those running backs. But that's just a personal preference on running back. So, Boyer, what Keep Trade Cut have to say for him?
Yeah, so KTC had him at plus 2,351, which was good enough for second in value in the league. It liked the London pick. It liked the Watson and Brian Robinson were about on par. Where he ends up making a lot of his value up is those last picks. Wandale Robinson, Tolbert, I don't know how you say his name. Shakir, all provided an immense amount of value where they were picked at. So in my little blurb, I have that he didn't make any moves, but he also didn't make any mistakes. He picked extremely well, and he picked the guys that, when he got to him, that just made sense. So I thought he had an extremely good draft. KTC agrees with me here. And, good job, Paul. First year in the league, and you're already crushing it.
All right, so let's reverse this one because I'm supposed to go first on mine. I don't want to go first on mine. Let's let Boyer tear me apart on Keep Trade Cut, and then we'll see how Andy feels comparatively, and then I'll finish up.
All right, give me a minute.
Sorry, did I not give you enough transition time from one team to the other? Just scroll down.
Listen. There we go. Okay,
A lot of work going on behind the scenes.
I'm ready for it. So, Keep Trade Cut thought that Tyler lost a little bit of value, lost 376 points in value through his draft. The Kenneth Walker pick was a drop in value. It was about 500 points. So the rest of Tyler's draft actually ended up okay. My assumption is that most of everybody assumes that Walker would go like 104. And because Ty reached at the 102 to get him, that's where the value got lost at. But Walker makes 100% sense as far as his team goes. So I understand it. Pickens was a little bit of a drop in value as well. So I'll start the blasting on that one, Ty. That one was definitely a reach. That one I like a little less just because he does go into a rougher situation with a lot of established wide receivers, not a clear-cut quarterback. That one's a little rough. But he did get Dotson. I liked with the White pick. Dulcich gave us the tight end that we expected him to draft at some point. So he was good for 8th in the league in total value. I think Ty had an okay draft. I don't think it was bad by any means. And when it comes to KTC value, I think that the Walker pick just kind of goes against you a little bit. And that's okay because, those first, 4 picks are all pretty interchangeable in all reality against value. So,
yeah.
Can we go next? All right.
Yeah.
So I see all of the same things that Keep Trade Cut sees, but I graded you highly for it because I feel like it made sense. I gave you a B+, Ty. I'm going to start there. I feel like you needed some wide receiver help. You needed some running back depth. Getting Kenneth Walker at the 102 feels like a little bit of a reach. Keep Trade Cut says it. I feel like mock drafts probably say it too. But if you look at the picks that you had, you have 4 picks in the first 15 picks. And you didn't know what running backs were going to be there at the 109, the 112. But you knew Kenneth Walker was there at the 102. So go get your guy. There's going to be a ton of wide receiver talent. Even more if you can spook somebody like Jerfry into taking an RB that they didn't necessarily want to take at the 104. If you would have started a run on running backs here, then maybe one of those top wide receivers falls to you at the 109. It didn't happen, but I mean, Pickens is good, Dotson's good, and then you managed to add Rashad White. You got 2 good running backs in good situations and 2 solid receivers, you nailed what you needed. The only thing that kept me from giving you an A is the Pickens pick. I would have taken Watson. He's bigger. He's got the higher draft capital. He's on a far better team, far better quarterback. So I see that as being better all around than Pickens, but get your guy. I mean, I can't be mad at you. It's still a good draft. So good work, bud.
Yeah. And all right. So going into the draft, I had planned on grabbing either London or Walker at the 1 or at the 2.
Sure.
And I decided that running back need was my biggest need. So I went with it. I went with Walker. I tried real hard with Jared Fry to trade up to the 104. Had I traded up to the 104, I would have taken London at 2 and hoped that Walker fell to the 4, with Paul's biggest need being a wide receiver.
For sure.
I couldn't get to the 4, so I had to grab my guy. You know, that's where I ended. But my hope going into this draft was get Walker, get Pickens, get Rachaad White. Those were the 3 guys I wanted.
Nailed it.
I thought Rachaad White, I was going to have to take at the 112 if running back started moving. I didn't expect Rachaad White to fall to the 203 with you taking Spiller and Boyer taking Pierce. That got me my guy at 203. So I was happy about that. Dotson is ranked right there with Watson. At anybody, any mock drafts you see, any tiers you see, anything, it's picking Watson, Dotson, all right there in a tier. And Pickens was my guy, and then I expected it to go Watson and Dotson off the board.
Sure.
But Rachaad White went, or not Rachaad White.
Samir?
No, Buffalo. Who the hell did Jeremy take? Jesus, I'm drawing a blank right now. Cook. Cook went, which let Dotson fall. So I was okay with that, grabbing a second, what I would consider a tiered tight end or tiered wide receiver there. And then having Rachaad White fall to me. I was happy getting 2 solid running backs, 2 solid wide receivers. I'm clearly the youngest team in the league. Bringing in, we'll say 6 new rookies. I'm gonna call it 5 right now because I don't know how Danny Gray is going to be with my last pick. But Greg Dulcich was in the 5th round or 4th round. He was being talked up by a lot of people pre-draft as he could be one of the better tight ends coming in. He's got all the skills with blocking, catching. He's got a good athleticism. So for me to be able to trade a 4th for a 4th straight up to go up and get my guy there too, I was also excited about. That was the last guy I wanted. The 4 guys I really wanted were Walker, Pickens, White, and then Dulcich. And I got all 4 of them. I gave myself an A- because I do know that I took some value hits, but in the end, I got all the guys I wanted, and that's where I'm at. So I might have myself overgraded, but it was perfect draft for what I wanted. So, all right. On to
let Boyer hit me first too?
Yeah, that's fine. Boyer, go ahead and hit Andy first, and then I'll jump in and we'll let Andy in with his own.
All right. So, Andy, Keep Trade Cut had you valued just under tie at number 9 with a difference of 576 points. Looking at the first pick, or looking at the pick that you made via Spiller, that was a significant drop in value. I think I saw him mostly going like 205 or 206 or something like that. I will say is that if he got to the 2-2, I would have taken him anyway. I would have probably gone even harder on that 202 trade to go get him. So good thing you got him, I guess. So I like the pick, but Keep Trade Cut didn't. That said, I like the stable of running backs that you picked after him. Kyron Williams, I like Strong, Chandler. You know, I mean, if one of them can shake out, then you're going to get a ton of value out of that position. And then looking at the big move, trading, looks like the 105 LaVisca, Chenaults, was that a 23 second and a 23 third for Tyreek Hill, a 23 second and a 24 third? Does that sound right?
Yeah, and the 305 I got back too,
Yeah, and the 305.
which turned into Kyron Williams. So
So, as far as that goes, Tyreek Hill was the second highest valued player obtained through this draft. We'll consider through the trade. So I think that worked out really well for you. The overall draft or the overall value of that trade slightly went to Nolan, but that's purely because of Laviska Chenault's. He's valued at like 2,337, which adds a lot of weird numbers to his to the top of his numbers. I think he comes out ahead by a few hundred points. I don't agree with that. I think that you did. I think Tyreek is worth 2 firsts. You got him for 1 in Laviska Shenault, and then an exchange of second and thirds at the back end, and you got a third back. I think that's a win for you any day of the week, and I think it makes you an immediate contender. So
here's hoping.
Yeah, the keep trade cut probably gets this one wrong to me for sure. It might be one of the more egregious ones, but it was just fun to see the values and see what the Dynasty community thought of your draft. It didn't like it. I did. So,
Ty, what'd you got?
Yeah, so this is pretty much strictly on the trade for me. And for you to get, so you guys flipped seconds moving forward, you flipped thirds moving forward. So essentially it was Viska in the 105 for Tariq in the 305.
Yeah.
I don't care about what round, where they're going to be later in the draft. You flip seconds, you flip
It's all
thirds.
guesswork.
So to me, Tariq is by far the best asset in that trade. And it's a clear win now piece for you. I get the Nolan side of it where he trades and gets to 105 and gets a young wide receiver to help build. But for you specifically, I love the trade getting Tariq. I think Tariq would have been more value had he held on to him mid-season and tried to trade him to a contender. So for what you paid for him, I'm all about it. I'm okay with Spiller. I think you grabbed him a little early. Kyron Williams is interesting to me. And I think I would have rather had Haskins or Ingram or one of those running backs that went right after Kyron Williams. So I wasn't high on that. I do like Pierre Strong just because they use every running back under the bush out in New England. And then Ty Chandler, I think is a solid handcuff, solid piece. So they're all shots, and I love taking shots on running backs, and that's what you did. And after grabbing Tariq, you didn't need to fill any wide receiver depth necessarily. So grabbing the running backs, praying for the best. I'm good with it. I gave you an A, mostly because you went and you got your guy and you said, listen, I'm making my run right now. So I'm good. I'm good with it. So.
Well, I gave me a B-, because I really like my trade, getting Tyreek and getting the 305 back for Laviska, who was not really starting on my team unless something major changed, and the 105, which I would have taken Jamison Williams, and he's not going to help me this year, and I'd like to start winning this year, preferably. Right. So, it was a no-brainer to make this deal, and I was really happy with it. But then I'm staring at the 201 with a gap until the 305. I love Spiller. He's a lot of talent, and I could have traded back, but if I trade back to the 204, 205, 206, wherever you think he might have gone or should have gone, he might not have been there, and then I would have been left holding my dick. So I just took him when I could, and I'm happy with it. Kyron Williams, same way. Love his talent. Landing spot, not great. So where I dinged myself on my draft grade is I'm trying to win now, and I passed up running backs that could help me this year for more talent and shit situations. So make up my mind, right? I like the talent, and I couldn't get away from that, and I probably should have taken a guy like Pierce at the 201.
But hold on, real quick. I do think Isaiah Spiller will help you this year, though.
I mean,
Because
maybe.
I think the Chargers have been looking for it. They drafted Roundtree last year. They drafted Kelly the year before. They drafted Jackson the year before. They've been looking for a running back too, which is why I was high on Roundtree last year, because I was like, they're going to bring this guy in and they're going to let him work.
I'm
Didn't
hoping.
work out. So if Spiller is a bigger body guy that can run between the tackles and spells Eckler on some of those goal line and not punish Eckler as bad, then if that's the guy they want, then that's the guy. He could be very valuable because he could take the valuable carries there. So I'm not mad about it. Damian Pierce is going to get more. Tyler Algier is going to get more carries.
Right.
But their teams are not as good. They're not going to have as many goal line carries. There's not going to be as much red zone work. So I'm not mad about the situation as long as he is the running back too, which I think he will be. So anyway, go on.
I'm just an injury away from a lead role, whereas some of those other guys are stepping into it.
Right.
And I mean, that's not to say that he can't contribute, but I'm going to be hoping for some goal line work and a touchdown if I have to start him, unless Eckler gets hurt, which we don't cheer for injuries here. So I'd just be fishing for a touchdown and 30, 40 yards, which isn't great.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember right, they were using Eckler quite a bit as the late game back when they had leads. And I mean, he's not a give it to him 3 straight downs and then do it again type of guy. Yeah. So I think that's where Spiller could obtain more yardage than what you're afraid that he'd get if they can get leads early and often, which I mean, with the offseason moves they've made, they very well could. You could see Spiller get some solid work. So I like Spiller. I wanted him as the Eckler handcuff. I think it was a fine move. KTC disagreed, but I think it's all right.
Yep. I took him early, but I mean, you said it yourself, Boyer. You'd have taken him at 202 if I hadn't taken him, and I wanted him. So I'm glad I got him where I did.
All right. So let's move on to Andrew. I've got Andrew. I kind of condensed some of these trades, but I got Andrew got Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins, and Damian Harris. Andrew gives up Brandon Ayuk, Trevor Lawrence, and the 111. So a 3-piece for 3-piece. There's some other stuff that was thrown in there as well, but these are the 6 pieces I'm looking at. And with all of those trades that got him to that point, his first drafted player was the 211, which was Tyrion Davis-Price, which is a handcuff to Elijah Mitchell out in San Francisco. Then he takes 4 dart throws, 3 on running backs, and 1 on tight end in the 4th and 5th round. So those are what it is. Like I just said with Andy, if you're going to take dart throws late, take them on running backs. Andrew did it with Mitchell last year in the later 3rd and hit. He's hoping something else hits. I'm not mad about the late picks. So for me, getting Brandon Cooks, Hopkins, and Harris turns Andrew into a heavy win now team. And if Andrew can't get there, this isn't going to look good. Giving up Trevor Lawrence and Brandon Ayuk, which I think Ayuk is still a solid wide receiver. And giving up the 111, which turned into James Cook. I like Brandon Cooks for what he is. He's a solid wide receiver, gets value every year. Hopkins with that suspension, you got to hope that he comes back solid the second half of the year and you're still in contention. And then Damian Harris, I think this is his last year as a bell cow guy. And even with that, bell cow is questionable out in New England. Ramondre Stevenson could take some work. They brought in Pierre Strong. They've got 3 other guys on that roster that they could use at any given time. I do like Damian Harris this year. But giving up Ayuk, giving up Trevor Lawrence and the 111, I think Andrew might have given up a little too much for my liking. So I gave Andrew, I did say that once again, I probably would have taken Algier there at the 211. I know that he wanted that handcuff for Mitchell, so I'm not mad about it. But grabbing a guy that has a full workload when you're moving into a win now, opposed to trying to handcuff, I think I would have gone that route. I know Andy's big into handcuffing everybody, but if you're going win now, would have Algier helped you a little bit more? Maybe, I don't know. But when Mitchell gets hurt, Tyrion Davis-Price could be a better choice here. They still have Sermon, they still have Jeff Wilson, they still have Hasty, they still have everybody in that Niners backfield. So who the hell knows what's going to happen there anyway? But with all that, I gave Andrew a C plus. I think he did make his team better for the win now situation. But I don't feel like this draft really favored him one way or the other.
Fair. This might be the first one that we differ pretty solidly on. So what Andrew needed going into the draft was a third wide receiver and then just some general depth. His receivers were CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, and then like Jarvis Landry, Juju maybe was his wide receiver 3. So what did he do? He took the 111, which could have been best receiver on the board at 111 was like Dotson, which wasn't going to do shit for him this year, right? And Andrew's wanting to win now. So he took the 111, dropped down 5 picks, and gave up the 308 to get Brandon Cooks. Done. 10 times out of 10, twice on Sundays. Let's do it. We got him at wide receiver 3. Fantastic trade. And then drop into the 204. He gives up Ayuk. I guess Ayuk would have been his wide receiver 3, depending on the week. Trevor Lawrence, who he doesn't really need. He's got Dak. He's got Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's just a bye-week filler. But you feel good about Dak. You can address quarterback in a year or two. So you gave up Ayuk and Lawrence and the 204 for Hopkins and Harris and a 24 second. The suspension sucks with Hopkins, and he was injured a little bit last year too. But he was still putting up touchdowns. He's still a talented receiver and a pretty high power offense. So solid move there. Damian Harris is that running back depth, score you touchdowns. And with having Elijah Mitchell and Jonathan Taylor, he's got Melvin Gordon. Like there's options on his roster to where if Damian Harris doesn't pan out, it's not going to tank his team either. So good add there, giving up Trevor Lawrence to get those guys. And then he got the second round pick in 2024, which could be a trade chip later. And then looking at his picks, he got Terry and Davis Price. Well, Andrew's got Elijah Mitchell. He's got Trey Sermon. He's got Jeff Wilson. I'm not sure if he even plays for the Niners anymore still.
He
but
does.
He's got the entire Niners running backs, which I don't know if you guys have followed the Niners running backs lately, but they all get hurt. And now, no matter who's playing on any given Thursday, Sunday, or Monday, Andrew's got it covered. So smart move there. Kevin Harris to kind of sort of handcuff Damian Harris was pretty savvy too. And then he's got a couple of later guys that are probably just going to be, cut bait later. But whatever. He turned his draft picks into guys that can contribute for him now. I think that's fantastic. I gave him a solid A.
See, I would almost argue that Abram Smith and Snoop Connor are going to be better choices this year than Kevin Harris. And they were drafted later. I think they were phenomenal value because Snoop Connor in Jacksonville, James Robinson, who knows what he's going to be coming off of an injury, and Travis Etienne still coming back from an injury. Snoop Connor could get some work there.
What about Carlos Hyde? Is he still there?
No. But Abram Smith is currently the backup in New Orleans. And
I do like the Smith pick.
And so I like both of those. I don't mind the Kevin Harris pick, and I get it's backing up the other Harris.
Right.
But
kind of. I mean, there's so many running backs there.
Right. So,
but still.
And so I don't, like I said, it's all running back depth. He took shots on it late, and I'm fine with it. But I think if you're going to talk about it, the better running back, and you skipped over Abram Smith and Snoop Connor, those are the two that I liked better than Kevin Harris. So anyway, Boyer, what does Keep Trade Cut tell us that we like here?
Yeah, so KTC has Andrew at a minus 652 in total value. Good enough just for 10th in the league. There was a lot to unpack here. So like as far as value goes, versus what he came in with because he made so many moves than what his output was. I personally love the Brandon Cooks pick. I think that was great for his value. KTC super agrees. So I think we're all on the same page there. Where KTC differs is the Ayuk, T-Law for Hopkins Harris trade.
He lost a
is-
quarterback, didn't get one back.
Yeah, it's strongly in favor of Ayuk and Lawrence here. KTC looks at youth. I mean, for the most part, it's not if you're contending, it's youth who's going to be playing the longest, and wide receivers and quarterbacks are those type of players. So there's a ton of value there. As far as giving up a little bit of the future, personally, I think Hopkins is regressing, and I don't trust Murray to get him the ball on a consistent basis at this point. And Damian Harris is on the Patriots, who like to spread the ball around, and they just drafted another running back. So for me, I think I probably would have, even as a contender, probably would have held on to Ayuk and Lawrence. But that's just personal preference. I get why he does it. If it works out, that's great. If it doesn't, then not only does he have a couple duds that he's kind of holding the bag on, but he traded a lot of future value to maybe keep the window open or do a short rebuild or something like that. So personally, I wouldn't have made the trade. I get why. I like the Davis Price pick. KTC does too. Before Andy was talking about his handcuffing his handcuff chains together. I still like the pick because anytime you can get any kind of running back on the San Francisco team, you've got a chance to hit gold more or less, and that could be a league winner. So I like that pick regardless. But yeah, that's kind of what KTC thinks. And hopefully Hopkins and Harris have one more full season left where they can put it together for him.
Yep. All right. So Andy, you want to jump into Burns?
Yeah, this one should go quick. Burns didn't have too many picks, and they were pretty hard to screw up. Burns, before the draft, needed some running back help. Could have used maybe a tight end. But he took Breece Hall at the 101, no-brainer there. At the 108, he took Sky Moore in a fantastic situation. On the Chiefs, Desmond Ridder at the 401, Jake Ferguson in the last pick of the draft, 512. So it was pretty hard to screw this up. Burns nailed it. He got the best player in the draft, the best fantasy player. What more can you say? Getting Sky Moore, I think, is good for him. He's going to the Chiefs. A receiver with Patrick Mahomes when they just lost Tyreek Hill. Can't be bad, right? Ridder in the 4th, he didn't really need, but is a decent choice. Same way all the quarterbacks are in the late rounds. Ferguson is probably getting cut in August because he's Mr. Irrelevant, but that's probably going to be pretty par for the course. So I gave Burns an A+ just because his team needed Breece Hall. He got Breece Hall, and you can't ask for more than that.
Yep. So the only thing I'm gonna differ on is you said you liked Ridder just for where he fell in the 4th. I like Ridder because he's got a chance to start this year. Rodgers is getting older. Watson should be good to go, but who the heck knows what's happening with him still. But I think Ridder could easily take that starting job and hold it. I like Ridder. I know that there wasn't a lot of draft capital into him in the NFL draft. And I know that matters, but I still think he's got a solid ability to run, throw. He looks good. Them bringing in Pitts last year and then Drake London this year, Tyler Algier this year, I think they're building that offense. And if Ridder can take out Mariota even by the mid to end year, if nothing else, Burns flips this 4th round quarterback for a 2nd rounder coming up, and I think that's phenomenal, right?
Sure.
So I really like the Ridder pick. I was trying to trade up into the early 4th to try to grab him because why the heck not? Even though I got Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, I don't know what my quarterback situation is yet. So I was considering him. I liked him. I gave Burns an A. He did what he had to do. Having the 101 and 108, if you mess those up, then you would have been in a lot of trouble. But you did what you had to do. I'm giving you an A. Not an A+ because you didn't really have to work to get there during the draft. It was just sitting there for you. So, Boyer, what's Keep Trade Cut got Burns you at?
KTC had him at a difference of plus 1,269.
Because he
It could have
took a
been
late quarterback.
so essentially is that that was good for fifth in the league. It because I think he was capped a little bit as far as like the KTC value based off of what he had to work with the 101 and the 108 and then pretty much nothing else. So he didn't have a lot of chances to, make up a ton of value just based off of how much he had going into it. That said, staying put, sometimes the best way forward is just to stay where you're at. And he grabbed Brees Hall. I like Sky Moore. Keep trade cut. Generally agrees with both those picks. Ritter does give him some added value as a later quarterback, but I'm with Tyler. I think it was a good pick, regardless. So really he went into it and he didn't mess up, and that's really what he just needed to do. Not get cute with it. Take the clear picks and move forward from there.
All right, so let's jump down to Underhill. Underhill moved back from the 202 and Claypool to get the 207, 208, 304, 310. I said I like this on Boyer's side where he got Claypool. I also like this from Underhill's side where he grabs a bunch of these picks. Then he moved back up from the 207 to get the 206. So you grab Trey McBride, and then he grabs John Mechie at the 208. Grabs Justin Ross at the 312. And then dart throws on Bo Melton, Jerome Ford, and Isaiah Likely. I'm still not 100% sure which direction Underhill's trying to move right now. If he's trying to still win, if he's trying to rebuild. So I think that's not ideal. I think Underhill needed to address running back and wide receiver in the draft. And trading back to miss Damian Pierce, David Bell, Alec Pierce. I think it was a big miss. I think there was a tier there that he could have grabbed. He liked Trey McBride and thought he could get him later. That's fine. But I'm not big on grabbing those early tight ends, clearly. And he's going to sit for a couple years. So he's behind Ertz. Is it a position of need right now that you traded back to get him when you could have gotten a couple guys that were startable now? Are you moving into a rebuild? Are you still trying to compete? I'm not sure what you're doing. So I think with that miss on the running back and wide receiver at Pierce and Bell and Damian Pierce and Alec Pierce and David Bell, for me, that personally hurt. I think he would have been better off staying at the 202 and grabbing one of those guys. I gave Underhill a C- for missing that boat and not grabbing one of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with everything Ty just said.
That's the first time that's ever happened.
I had Undy needing some running back help and maybe a tight end. He got McBride, which is great. He was the best tight end in the class at 206. That feels like it's about right. But he had the 202, traded back. He gave up Claypool for some more picks, and then he gave up a couple of thirds to get a second rounder next year. So if he'd have just held on to the 202, he'd have had a shot at a real running back that was going to contribute. But after all the moves that he made and going to get Trey McBride with his top pick and getting Mechie shortly thereafter, Undy didn't end up drafting a running back until Ford at the 502. That's not going to get it done. He needs some running back help bad. So I gave him a C- as well.
And even at the 208, he grabbed Mechie. He wanted Zamir White because he had talked to me about it.
Algier was still there.
Algier, Brian Robinson, Tyrion Davis Price, all three of them still there.
Yeah.
I would have taken any of them over John Mechie at the 208.
Yeah, and it's hard to know, because these things happened in real time. But if he doesn't trade the 202 for the 207 and the 304, then you take your stud running back, you take Pierce or White at the 202, and then you still make the Claypool trade to get the 208, and McBride's probably still there. He doesn't need Mechie. He needed a running back. Now it's easy to say that looking back because
Right.
he didn't know that was how it was going to fall. That Boyer was going to make that deal with him for the 208. But hindsight's 2020, and it could have been better.
Yep. Boyer, what do you got?
Yeah, so KTC had his difference at 1,704 negative. So that puts him at his 11th for the league. Pretty much he just should have stayed home. It was hard to figure out exactly where the difference in value came from because he made so many moves down without like putting it all out, which I didn't want to do. So what appears is that he traded down too much. He didn't quite get enough guys to meet the value that he gave up on those higher picks. Is what it appears to me. As far as Mechie, he's injured going into this year. I like Mechie enough as a talent, but I didn't think he needed Mechie. I think Algier was a much better pick there, and probably who I would have gone with if I didn't make the Claypool trade. That being said, Justin Ross, I think that was a really sneaky pick, and he's either going to be a bust or he's going to be like the steal of the draft. So I like that pick. I'd actually tried to get back up to where he was taken to snag him, and I couldn't quite get up. But overall, I think it was an underwhelming draft for Underhill. Just traded down too much, and maybe he'll be able to learn something next year and get some higher value picks and keep them.
Yep. All right, Andy, you want to jump into Mattoon?
Yeah, sure. So going into the draft, Mattoon didn't really need anything because his team is stacked. Maybe an upgrade at tight end, but you really can't get that in the draft when there's not a Kyle Pitts. So what did he do? He traded the 107 and the 204 to bump up to 104. And then later he gave Noah Fant for the 206, flipped the 206 for the 207 and the 407. And then he gave a 2023 second for the 304 and the 310. He snagged Treylon Burks, Zamir White, Triquan Thornton, and Wittermeyer. So, like I said, Mattoon didn't have any holes going into the draft. Props to him for going and getting his guy. Burks is coming into a good situation, and getting Zamir White is not too shabby either. But I gave him a D plus, and that comes from two things. He gave up a lot to get Treylon Burks. 204 is a lot. We've already talked about all the guys that were available around there. And to get Burks over, I mean, you probably assumed that Williams or the Ohio guy.
Olave.
Thank you. He was going to be, those were going to be the options for him there at the 107. Burks is in a better situation. Burks is going to contribute more year one. But looking at Mattoon's team, he's a contender now. He doesn't need the receiver. Just keep building, right? Like, there's something to be said for going and getting your guy, but he paid a lot to get a guy that I don't think over the long haul is all that different from who would have been there for him at 107. So I knocked him hard for that. But the other thing that I really didn't like was he gave up Noah Fant to get the 206. Now he's starting David Njoku at tight end. Neither of those guys is great, and Fant's on the Seahawks now, but Fant's still playing with the same quarterback, and with that quarterback, he did a lot better than David Njoku did last year. So looking at Mattoon going into the draft versus Mattoon coming out of the draft, his starters got worse because Burks isn't starting for him, and neither is Fant because he doesn't have him on his team anymore. So I really don't like that. I'm surprised because pretty much every move Mattoon has made so far in this league, I have been annoyed with because of how good it's been and how good of a situation he's built himself to where he's got draft capital, he's got youth, he's got depth, he's got killer starters. Mattoon's team is freaking stacked, but this draft was a miss for me.
All right, so I'm not mad about the trade up to go get Burks. He was banking on Williams there at the 107 was his original thought. I love the position I'm in because a lot of these guys talk to me about things as we go, which makes me so excited because I'm not going to screw with it. I knew
Not helping you.
Right. I knew who I wanted anyway, so it wasn't hurting anything.
Sure.
But had he stayed at the 107 and Williams is there for a contender this year, if Williams isn't healthy, it's not benefiting him. He almost could have taken Sky Moore at the 107 and let Williams fall, which would have been just as bad. So at that point, moving up to get Burks, I'm not mad about it. I offered Jeremy and Fryer the 109 and a first next year to move up to the 204 or to the 104. So for me personally, I was willing to give up the 9 and a first next year to go up to the 4. So Colin giving up the 107 and 204, I'm not mad about it. I was willing to give up, in my opinion, more than that.
Who were you gonna take at the 104, Ty?
I would have taken Drake London at 2 and then banked on Walker falling to 4.
Okay.
Because like we said, Paul at 103 needed a wide receiver bad. So I would have flipped my picks and prayed that Walker fell, because even if I took London at 2, nobody would have been mad at me.
Yeah, I mean, second best running back and first best wide receiver. That feels pretty good.
Right. So for me, I was looking at moving to 9 and a 23 first. So moving to 107 and 204 actually doesn't feel bad to me. So I actually thought that was a positive move for Mattoon, just because Burks is going to play now. He's in a good situation. And Williams and even Sky Moore. As much as I like Sky Moore, I think he's in a good situation. There's a lot of shit there that they've got to situate and try to figure out what's happening. I think Sky Moore is probably the 2 to start the year and then slowly finds his way into the wide receiver 1 role there. But Burks is going to be the clear go-to for Colin's team. He's going to be a flex starter, wide receiver 3 at minimum. And I think that's fine. Moving Fant didn't help him, I would agree. I like the Zamir White pick. I think he grabbed Tyquan Thornton a little early, but so did the Patriots in the draft. So if he's a second-round wide receiver, I guess go get him. But I don't know. I wasn't high on that pick, but the Patriots liked him. They went and got him, so why not? Weidermeyer, whatever. But I was borderline between C plus and B minus because I actually liked that Burks trade up, because I thought, as a win now team, go grab a guy that you're for sure is going to get the ball, going to get targeted, and going to have a role, opposed to grabbing a guy like Williams or Sky Moore at that 7. So I was okay with it.
Fair enough. Or what does the numbers say?
KTC had him at minus 3,198. The big difference here ended up being the second round pick that he gave up in the trade to go up and get Burks. Burks, for a frame of reference, the 107 was worth 5,523 points. The 204 was worth 3,622 points, and Burks was only worth 5,918 points. So there's the bulk of his drop there. I actually put it into Keep Trade Cut to see what a more even trade as far as value would come out to, and it was something like a mid-third would have been better for him. And I think that's probably what it was
anybody's
worth.
doing that to move up 3 spots in the first round. Nobody's taking a third for that.
Nope.
I mean, right. But I'm just saying is that's where the value shakes out to. And that's probably what I would have offered. I'm assuming then Jared Fry would have taken Tyler's deal, because I'm with Andy on this. I don't think that Burks is worth the jump between the guys that he could have gotten at the 107. The Fant trade did lose him a little bit of value, but it was really that first one that did. So if Burks ends up being great, then it's going to be a great trade. If he doesn't, then he gave up a whole second rounder for a guy who's not helping him win, when he needs to, even if Burks ends up being good 3 or 4 years down the road. It's going to really hurt if Jameson Williams, who was picked at the 107, ends up going off in this first year or something.
So,
That's
right.
That's
well,
gonna happen.
and so here's the difference. Andy loves Jameson Williams. I'm not super high on Jameson Williams. So the value for me was getting Burks, where Andy said had he stayed at the 5, he would have taken Williams.
Yeah, and to be honest, I like Burks more than Jameson Williams myself, but would I give up
Not enough to pay for him.
second? Would I give up a second rounder to go up from Williams to Burks? No, I wouldn't.
So the important thing here is Mattoon has Kupp, Evans, and Pittman as his top 3 wide receivers. He's got Chubb, Kamara, and Aaron Jones as his 2 running backs and a flex. So he didn't need to go get a starter. He could have sat and took Jameson Williams and not needed him this year. If he does good in the back half of the first year for a playoff push, then great. But he could have just built his team that way. But then on the flip side, he gave up his starting tight end in Noah Fant to get the 206, which flipped to the 207, which he took Zamir White, who's the freaking handcuff to Josh Jacobs. Like, that's doing jack shit for you this year. And you gave up your starting tight end. Maybe Mattoon is super high on Njoku, but man, that is not a good move in my eyes. That one bothers me more than the trade up in the first. If you want to get your guy, get your guy. I would have been content to not pay for the choice because any of those receivers is fine when you're just drafting them for their career and not because you need them this year, because Mattoon really doesn't. But that Fant one, it hurts his team. It hurts his starting lineup, and that's the only thing that he could have done to get himself a bad draft grade, and he did it.
So, right. Well, and so the other thing, looking at that, he's got already 3 good wide receivers. He's already got 3 good running backs. He brings in Burks. What says he can't flip Evans or Pittman and go get himself a tight end? You know,
I mean,
we're strictly talking about draft grade. So that's all.
There's got to be another move here, right?
Right. But whether or not it happens is a different story. But I see the long game that could be playing where he's got draft picks next year. He's got good tight ends, good running backs. He can make that move to grab a Waller because Nolan's been looking to move him. Grab, anybody that could be a halfway decent tight end this year.
Sure.
Stop giving him ideas, Ty. Jeez.
Sorry. I mean, Mattoon, you suck. I'm dropping your grade.
Please don't trade with Nolan again.
All right. Anyway, on that, let's move on to Colin Kelly. Enough about Mattoon. So is there much to say about Colin Kelly?
It should be quick.
He drafted Olave at the 106. He grabbed Noah Fant with the 206. My only downfall there is he already had Kittle, so he didn't necessarily need to do that. Got Matt Corral in the 4th because he lost his 3rd. And then added Tristan Ebner in the 5th round. I thought Kelly was pretty set at wide receiver and quarterback, but I mean, clearly at the 106, if you're not going to trade back, you're going to take Olave or Williams or whoever you like there, because you're not drafting James Cook yet. But I thought in the 4th round when he grabbed Matt Corral, having Russ, having Stafford, I didn't think he necessarily needed Corral. I think he could have grabbed a guy like Abram Smith, a guy like Snoop Connor, any of those backup running backs there that, because Pierre Strong just went, Kevin Harris was there, Abram Smith was there, Snoop Connor was there. And I thought that was kind of where he should have gone with that pick. But they're all dart throws at that point. So whatever. Grab Matt Corral. It is what it is. He grabbed Tristan Ebner in the 5th. So I guess that's your dart throw and running back. I gave Colin Kelly a C. He grabbed his picks where he was and moved on. So whatever. It is what it is for me on this draft, because the Fant move didn't make me excited for his pick because he's already got Kittle. So what do you got on that one, Andy?
Yeah, I had Colin needing running back depth and a young quarterback potentially if you wanted to stash a guy. He got the young stash of Matt Corral in the 4th round. So I liked that because Wilson and Stafford are aging quarterbacks. Not that either one of them is bad. They're both very good fantasy quarterbacks, but he's not drafting a quarterback for this year. He's drafting a quarterback to stash, and maybe he turns into something in 2 or 3 years when you might be looking at making a switch there. So the Olave pick at 106 was down to him or Jameson, and Colin picked the one that he preferred, which is fine. I don't have any issues with that. He took a guy that was there. Not a lot of choice. The Fant trade, fine. Kittle has had some injury issues. That the 206 would have been a good spot for Colin to get that running back depth. The Tristan Ebner pick, I don't like. He's going to be a cut candidate. He seems like he's more headed toward a kick returner role than anything. So I don't expect him to actually be an offensive contributor in real life, let alone fantasy. So I gave him a C-. Colin didn't do anything terribly interesting. He's staying pretty middle of the road here.
Yep. Let's see what Keep Trade Cut has to say.
Yeah, KTC had him at plus 528.
Wow.
He lost a tiny bit of value on Olave, but it's whatever. He lost a tiny bit of value on Fant, which is whatever. Where he
Late
makes up his
quarterback.
value, Matt Corral picked at the in the 4th round. So I am interested to see, what the difference this year is, because all these quarterbacks were taken a little later in the NFL draft. So they didn't generate enough excitement in the fantasy community, and they went backwards in the draft, even though they still held some sort of value. Next year when we have more quarterbacks drafted in the 1st, do we still get the same kind of value for quarterbacks later in fantasy drafts as well? My bet is probably no, or at least not as much. But in this one, you pick quarterback late, KTC likes you. So I think he did okay with this draft. Nothing spectacular, but nothing bad. He was good for number 6 in the league by KTC.
All right, Boyer, what I'm going to do here, because this is going to be the biggest crapshoot discrepancy type thing, I think. I'm going to start talking through a couple of what Nolan got in this, and then I want you to run through Keep Trade Cut before Andy and I give our grades. Is that fair?
Oh, so you're going to talk a little bit, and then you want the values to go through?
Yeah. Can we do that?
Yeah, let me find Nolan here.
All right, that's why I'm going to talk for a minute.
Yep.
All right. So Nolan moved Tariq Hill. All right, so back to the Laviska trade. He moved Tariq Hill into 305 plus a couple other randoms that flipped with Andy to get Laviska in the 105, which turned into Garrett Wilson. And then he flipped Hopkins and Damian Harris for Ayuk, Trevor Lawrence, and the 204, which turned into David Bell. So there was another one of his trades. He takes dart throws. So we got Garrett Wilson at 105, David Bell at 204. He took some dart throws on Tyler Beatty, Velus Jones Jr., and Kyle Phillips late. Boyer, can you give us some of the rundown on Keep Trade Cut before we go into team needs and how we felt like his draft went?
Yeah, so Nolan by Keep Trade Cut standards is plus 1,806. It was good for 4th in the league. This is mostly going to be off of that extra value that he gets for Lawrence and Ayuk that we kind of talked about earlier. Laviska has value. And like I said, in that trade, it didn't really feel like it mattered as much to Andy as the value ended up adding to Nolan's side. So that's kind of whatever. He did add a couple future picks. He did. I do like the Wilson pick up top. As far as like Velus Jones, I think was a relatively wasted pick. He's going to be more of a kick returner. And KTC kind of agrees, so we lost a little bit there. When you really consider, so as far as like the total amount of value that he had going into the draft, so just in draft capital, he only had 3,237. The average was about 10,000. I think Tyler was first with about 21,000. So he had very, very little to work with. And so that means he ended up trading like, I don't know, 24,000 points worth of value of actual players who are playing right now in the NFL to get what he got. It's a little confusing based on what he was trying to do. He just got Tyreek and Hopkins. I think he traded, like a couple firsts for each of them, or a first, and a second for Hopkins. I don't remember, but he traded quite a bit of value for him, and I don't feel like he got that value back in this draft. just for him to try a rebuild with less capital. It didn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. Obviously, KTC likes Trevor Lawrence and Ayuk, but I don't think it was enough as far as what he needed to get. And I know that Tyler, you thought that he probably should have waited until middle of the year to try and get a lot more, especially if he could have gotten 23 draft capital. I think that would have been a much better rebuilding strategy, but it's not like he doesn't have any young guys to build off of from here. We'll just have to see where he goes.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here real quick. So first off, I gave him a C- for draft. Like Boyer said, to be honest, this was my least favorite draft, mostly because of the value he lost in Tariq, value he lost in Hopkins, Damian Harris. I think these guys could have gotten more value when you see them play during the season. Of course, Hopkins suspension, maybe that adjusts things now. But if Tariq Hill goes to Miami and starts doing real well and is Tariq Hill of Kansas City and Miami, you could have gotten multiple firsts for him. You could have gotten a 23 first, 24 first mid-season from a contender. Yeah, they might have been late first, but you're getting 2 firsts for him. At that point, you can readjust. Same thing with Damian Harris. Maybe you're not getting 2 firsts, but you can get a first out of Damian Harris if he's going into the season, tearing it up, putting up those touchdowns again. I think you could have gotten another, even a 24th first out of him, put it out a couple of years, 2 or 3 seconds out of him if you'd rather have gone that route. But value-wise, I think these guys were more valuable mid-season than right now. And you went from a young building team to an older team to a young team, back to an old team, back to a young team. At this point, you've got to hit a strategy and stick with it and just ride it out. And that's why this was my least favorite draft. It's at a C-. It probably could have been a D+ for me because I didn't go any Ds or Fs. Probably could have been a D+, just based on going back and forth and losing all that value in those veteran players. So, Andy, what do you think on that one?
So, looking at Nolan's team going into the draft, he had Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Devonta Smith, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham Jr., DJ Chark. Solid crop of wide receivers. He needed running back help, like really bad.
For sure.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now competing with Ronald Jones and hasn't really shown much in 2 years. Miles Sanders is in a similar situation where between the coaching staff not trusting him and just a general lack of productivity, he's not seeming to be a solid fantasy option. And then you're looking at Rashad Penny. So Nolan needed running back, like really badly needed running back help. And he gave up Tyreek to move to the 105. The trade on the surface of giving Tyreek to move up and get a young Garrett Wilson, if that's the guy that you want, to move from old to young, I'm fine with that in a vacuum. Giving Hopkins, Damian Harris, and a second for Ayuk, Lawrence, and the 204 to get a pick this year. I like moving from Hopkins to Ayuk if you're trying to be young. I get that. I like pairing Trevor Lawrence with Justin Fields while you're getting your quarterback situation figured out. Another solid young combination of I'm rebuilding, and that's great. But my main concern here is Nolan needed a running back. He really could have used 2 or 3. And he traded into the first round, took a receiver. He traded into the second round, took a receiver. And he didn't take a running back until Batty at 404, who's not going to do anything for him this year. And if he's tanking for the future, that would be fine. But he doesn't have a first round pick in the next 2 drafts. So I'm not sure. I just don't see it. And then, like, this didn't factor into my grade at all, but that running back you needed was Breece Hall, and you gave that pick to Burns and the Tyreek Hill, Darren Waller trade, and then turn that back into the 105. So I'm with Ty. You gotta pick a lane and stay in it, because every time you flip flop, you're just changing pennies on the dollar, and it's putting you in a tough spot. I didn't think any of the trades were bad. It was just the end result didn't look great.
And here's the thing, on a rebuild, I don't mind where he's at, because getting the young quarterbacks, getting the young
For
receivers,
sure.
I get it. And I understand that that's the process, right? Because those guys have longevity. They take a couple years. Running backs come in, and if they're good, are going to hit. But
Like, he
Andy
doesn't
said,
have the picks to get
there's-
those running backs.
there's no first sitting there. So unless there's some way, somehow, you can find a guy on your roster that's older, a Miles Sanders, a Darren Waller, a Odell Beckham, if he finds a team and is good, and somebody wants to give you a second or a third for him, but you got to find some of these older guys and ship them for picks if you want to find running back. And I don't think you have the guys on your roster to do that, minus maybe Miles Sanders if he comes out and is hot. So that's my only downfall, is you don't have those pieces now, where Hopkins and Harris and Tariq would have been those guys you could have gotten first round picks out of. So
Yep. I just don't see where these running backs come in. But hopefully Nolan's got a plan.
So, all right, let's move on to Jared Fry. I'll let you go first on this one, Andy, since I did a lot of talking on the last one.
All right. So going into the draft, Jared Fry needed some depth at running back, maybe, and tight end. So what do? They traded the 104 for the 107 and the 204. Then they packaged Brandon Cooks with the 204 to move up to the 111 and snag the 308. And then they drafted Jamison Williams, James Cook, Jelani Woods, Hassan Haskins, Keontae Ingram. So pretty much everybody knew that Jared Fry was eyeballing Kenneth Walker with the 104. They needed the running back depth, like I mentioned. But when Ty took him at the 102, they didn't have to hold on to that pick. So they slid back to the 107, and they gave up their choice of which receiver they got, but they still got one in that top tier, and they added the 204 to do it. Well, they didn't really need a receiver, but they got one in Jamison Williams. So that made Brandon Cooks expendable. So they threw him in a package to add a third round pick and bump up from the 204 to the 111 and get the RB3 in this draft in James Cook, which is a great move for them, because they couldn't get the top guy. They couldn't get the second guy. So they maneuvered their picks and their players that were expendable to get that third guy at a reasonable cost. I thought that was great. And then Jelani Woods is a solid add for some depth. Haskins is fine. I like the Keontae Ingram pick as well. But I thought that Jared Fry put on a freaking clinic on how to work with what you have to get what you need and make trades that make sense. They could have put all their eggs in one basket to try to move up and get the 102 from Ty to get Walker, or do something crazy, but they didn't have to. At the end of the day, they have Jamison Williams, they have James Cook, they have a tight end prospect, and they did a really nice job of getting all of that to fall their way. I gave them an A+. This was one of the best drafts in the league.
Yeah. So I won't cover all the trades again, but getting JMO, getting James Cook, they got two positions, two solid guys. JMO, they don't necessarily need him right now, but he could be a stud moving forward. James Cook is the guy that they needed. I'm okay with Jelani Woods. That's the guy they wanted. The guys that I was super excited about were Haskins and Ingram. Ingram right now, with Williams going over there, doesn't look quite as exciting anymore, but I still like him. I still like the prospect. I don't know that Williams is going to really spell much more. If Ingram comes in and does what he's supposed to do and can be a halfway decent pass catching back, can be able to pound the middle, Ingram's going to be fine. I'm not worried about it, because, Williams is 27, and is what it is. So we'll cover that later, I'm sure. But I like Ingram even with that trade for Williams. And to be honest with you, I actually kind of liked the trading out of the 404 to pick up Kenny Galladay. What's the 404? Hold on. Let me slide back up here to the 404. Tyler Beatty. After Khalil Shakir's gone, Kenny Galladay is going to be better than anything that's left out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Even before Khalil Shakir's gone, Kenny Galladay should be better than whatever's out there. And with Jeremy and Fryer being a contending team is what I'm going to, with the team they've got, they should be a halfway decent contending team, pending moves. They are a little bit older and they needed to grab some younger guys, and that's what they did in J-Mo and James Cook and Jelani Woods and a couple extra running backs. I gave them an A. I gave nobody an A+. I gave a couple people an A. So they were one of my favorite drafts as well, and I think they did a great job. I just think, they should have taken my trade and grabbed the 23 first so that I could have gotten my running back and wide receiver.
Or what do the nerds say? We can't hear you. We lost you.
Oh no, Warriors gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Now we can hear you.
All right. So the nerd says that they got plus 2,784 points. It was good for number 1 in the league. So really where this comes down to is same reason why Mattoon is last is why Jared Fry ends up being first. It's the extra second rounder that they were able to get out of it. I love what they were able to do as far as maneuvering back. And we've talked about a couple of our own drafts, a couple other drafts where, where is the value at? Did I feel really comfortable trading down? Was I going to be able to get my guy? I didn't want to take that risk, so I reached, et cetera. Jared Fry did all those things. They traded down, they traded back up, they got their guy, they got value out of it. It all worked out in their favor. And so I thought it was a really good draft for them. I like Jameson Williams. James Cook is a really good ad who's on a really good team. He should get plenty of work, I imagine, assuming he takes over like a 1A role. And honestly, Jelani Woods profiles as one of the most athletic tight ends to come out of the draft ever. And he's right up there with Kyle Pitts athletically. He just doesn't have the production to back it up like Pitts did. So I like him as a prospect. If you're going to swing on tight end, swing big. And that's what they did. So it's funny. Largely KTC is actually agreeing with most of your guys' grades. In this case, I think it hit the head right on, and I couldn't agree more with what you guys have said so far myself.
All right. Well, with that, we hit everybody's team grades. Let you know how we felt about your draft. Let us know how maybe you felt about it or how our grades were. We'll shoot out our grades to everybody, the keep trade cut scores, that sort of stuff. But we're ready to get into more of the off season. We'll talk about teams moving forward, talk about outlooks and all that stuff coming up. But other than that, that's all we got for you tonight. Andy, Boyer, anything left?
I got nothing.
Nope.
All right. On that, we're out.